How you going, guys? Mike with you here once again, and welcome to episode 7 of the Java VTM. This will surely be the very last of this series of Java VTMs. That's right, after this video we would have covered all the fundamental basics that we need to write programs in Java. We've looked at all the primitive data types, such as ints and longs and booleans. We've looked at control structures and how we can make decisions in our programs to decide what gets executed. We've looked at Boolean expressions. We've looked at all the Boolean operators that we can use to generate these expressions. We've looked at looping. We've looked at strings and objects. And now in this video, we're going to focus on arrays. So with this, we're going to pretty much wrap up this series of Java VTMs. We've looked at all the basics that we need to cover. So anyway, this video is going to look at arrays. We're going to have a look at what arrays are and how we can use them. We're going to use some arrays with loops, because really arrays and loops go hand in hand. That looping is really handy for dealing with arrays. And then finally, we're going to be looking at arrays and strings. In particular, we're going to see exactly what this is. It'll finally become apparent. And we're going to do something kind of interesting, maybe using that. So let's get started. First bit of a comment. Array test.java. This file demonstrates arrays. Excellent. So public class array test and a main method. Okay, and we're ready to go. Firstly, what is an array? Well, think about a situation. We're writing a program where we're storing someone's CD collection. We need to store the names of all the albums. Now, without arrays, if we were just doing with what we know so far, we'd probably have to have a heap of string variables to store all the album names. Suffer against the grain. These are all Bad Religion albums. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, that would become really troublesome, especially if it was a large CD collection. We'd need to have huge number of variables just to do all this. It's not really good. So arrays are a way where we can group all of this data together into one nice convenient package. But if we come over to Super Paint, if we do something like, previously we've had an int variable which points to, of course, a location in memory that stores the value. And similarly we had a string which pointed to something in memory which held a reference to a string object. An array is a bit different. What an array does is store, let's say an int array, because they're easy. It points to a number of int variables that we can use. Using the same variable name, we can access a number of values in here. Okay? That's what an array does, and hopefully already you can see how useful they can be. So, how do we create an array? There are two ways to do it. Firstly, is if you already know what the values are going to be in the array. And this is what we'll do first. So, how do we declare an array? Similar to how we do it with primitive data types or strings or any other thing in Java. We first have the data type. We're going to create an int array. So int. Then we have square brackets, opening and closing. That tells Java that we're creating an array. It's important to note here that the data type is the type of things we're going to store in the array. They can't really be mixed and matched. What I mean is if we declare an int array, we can't try and store a string in it, for example. It doesn't work. So, next we have the variable name, and we'll call this int array. And that's all we need to do to declare it. However, if we want to initialize it with some values, what we can do, if we already know what the value is going to be, because sometimes we don't, we can go equals and then curly brackets, and we put the variables in here. For example, let's store the values 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We can just put the values right in here, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. What that's done is created an array that's big enough to store 5 ints, and it's assigned these values to the positions in the array. If we were going to create a character array, char array, it works in the same way, except remember, because they're characters, we have to put them in single quotes. So A, B, C, that sort of thing. That's created a character array. So now what's actually happened here is Java has put the values 4, that's a 4, what? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 into here, okay? And we can access all of these numbers from our variable name. So how do we do that? Well, to demonstrate, let's do a print line, system.out.println for now. So how do we access these? We first have the variable name, int array, and then some square brackets. What goes inside here is the index of the element that we want to access. Whoa, what did I mean by that? All of these values are stored in an array at a specific location, okay, called the index. And the index always starts counting from 0, okay? What that means is that the value 5 is stored at index 0, the value 6 is stored at index 1, and the value 7 is stored at index 3. Okay? So Java, like all programming, is done with starting counting from 0. It's just the way it is. So if we tried to access int at 3, we would get the value 8, because 0, 1, 2, oh, I'm an idiot, we'll get the value 7. 0, 1, 2, 3. Because we start counting from 0. Okay? So that's how we can access our actual values that are stored in the array. So if we come over here, let's just say, oh no, I know why I got confused. I put 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 into the actual array, but I drew 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, my bad, not to worry. In this example, if we want to access, let's say, the value 7, what index will this be? 0, 1, 2. So all we do is put the index inside these square brackets. Now if we save this and come over and compile it, it printed out the value 7, exactly what we wanted. So that's how we can access individual values that are stored in an array. Similarly, if we wanted to print out B, we'd change this to 1 and change this to char array. Now recompile and run. It printed out B, okay? B is at index 1 because we start counting from 0. That's very important and kind of easy to forget when you're new to this sort of thing, so just keep that in mind. So, that's how we can access individual values using an array. What about if there is another way to create an array though. If we don't know what the values are going to be when we first create the array, we do it like this. Int array, we'll call this int array2, equals, and then we use the new keyword, similar to how we can create new strings, new int, square brackets. Inside these square brackets goes the size of the array, i.e. how many elements we want to be able to store. So if we want to be able to store 5 elements in this array, like we do here, we put in the value 5, semicolon. That creates a new int array size 5 that we can use and fill up with elements later. So they are the 2 ways that we can create arrays. So with that, that's the real basic of... My phone's going off, I'm sorry. That's the basic idea of an array. We can access multiple values from the one variable. So, what else can we do with arrays? Well, hopefully without even me telling you, you can probably start to see that looping might be kind of handy when dealing with arrays. As a simple example, let's say we want to print out all of these elements. Now we could do it like this and copy and paste a whole heap of print line statements, but there's an easier way. That's right, an easier way. What we can do is with a loop. So let's do it with a for loop. I really like for loops for dealing with arrays. They're really nice and elegant. So for, declaration goes first, remember, int I equals 0. Now what do we have for the condition? Something that you might not see as really obvious, but it's kind of handy to have. All arrays have a property which is their length. And we get this by going the variable name int array dot length. Okay? So we can use this as part of our condition. So we can go while I is less than int array dot length. Finally, our operation I++, and we're ready to go. In here, we can have a print line statement, system.out.println. And now we want to print out all of these variables. Now, how do we do that? Well, think about this. The first time that we get into this line of code, I is equal to 0. The second time, it's equal to 1. The next time, it's equal to 2. And this is going to continue until I is less than array.length, or I is equal to 4. Because the length will be 5, so it'll stop when it's equal to 4. It'll go up to when it's equal to 4. We can use this variable as our index to the array by going int array at index I. So we're using a variable as our index to get what value we actually need. So if we save and compile this, it printed out, well, first it printed out the character B from the last print line, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. It printed out all the values that are stored in our array. So that really simple example, just printing out values, hopefully, just by printing out a value, you can see the power that we have when we're using arrays and for loops. We can do the same thing with a while loop. We demonstrated that 2 videos ago. Nothing major. So, what else can we do with this? Well, we don't have to print these out. We can do absolutely anything we like in here, any processing at all. So, why don't we do something a little bit different? I'll leave this processing up to your creativity, because really you can do whatever you like. Let's have a look now at this mysterious string array args. Hopefully, just after watching this, after seeing this part, you know what this is. Args is simply an array of type string. Where does this come from? Well, if you've we've dealt with this. If you play with command line programs a little bit, such as Java, if we just type Java, we get a whole heap of arguments that we can include when we run our program. The most basic thing is Java and the program name. Okay? These array test is a command line argument to the Java program. Okay? We can also send command line arguments to our Java programs, and that is what this string array is. They're command line arguments that we can use in our programs. So just as a very quick example, let's just see how we can use this. It's really simple. We can do exactly the same as what we did here. Let's just print out all of our arguments. Args. So we can go args.length here. We'll save that and compile it. Where is it? There it is. Notice that didn't really print out any arguments. This is different from if you've dealt with C or C++, the command line arguments that you get from C and C++ include the program name as the first element. In Java, that doesn't happen. The args array is only command line arguments. So if we do something like this, Java array test, ASDF, QWERTY, Michael is awesome. Something like that, and we run it, we get all of our command line arguments separated by spaces, of course, printed on their own line. So that's what this mysterious string array args really is. It's just a simple string array that we can use in our programs. So why don't we try this? Let's do something. What can we do? Let's read in a string from command line argument instead of from the keyboard, which we could also do using that keyboard class that I've provided. Let's read in a word from the keyboard and let's print out the reverse of that. Well, how do we get the reverse of that? We can do it really simply using an array. What array? Because really all this is going to give us is the actual word. We can get it from the string class. If we jump back into our Java API and have a look at string, there is a method somewhere in here. Here it is. toChar_array converts this string into a new character array. So it's going to return to us an array similar to this, which we can use and manipulate it same as we could any other array. So, just before we do anything, let's just comment out this. I don't want to get rid of this code because it's kind of interesting, but let's just comment it out and get it out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do, often if we don't provide command line arguments, like you saw, if we don't tell Java to do anything, it'll print out a list of how the program can be used. Let's do that for our program to make it nice and easy. How can we do that? Well, basically, if the user doesn't provide any command line arguments, we're going to print out an error telling them how to use it. We can do this using the array property of length, similar to how we used length here. If this args array has a length of 0, that means we didn't supply any command line arguments. So let's do that. If args.length equals 0, system.out.println, you must specify a word to reverse. Simple little error checking. Else. Now, we are going to be manipulating the word that's supplied as the first command line argument. So that's going to be the first element in this args array, or it's going to be args at position at index 0. So, what can we do? We already know that this is going to return a string, and we can use this string really easily. For a start, we can get the character array right then and there. So let's declare a character array, char array characters equals args, the element at index 0, the first string that was supplied as a command line argument, dot. What is the name of this? toChar_array, which accepts no parameters. toChar_array. This is going to give, what is this going to do? It's going to give us a string object, and just like any other string object, we can use these methods to do some things to it. And we're calling get toChar_array. This returns a character array which is then put into the characters variable. Well, the reference to it is put into the characters variable, because just like strings and objects, arrays are passed by reference. Okay? Something to keep in mind. So now, how can we really go about reversing this string? Well, first, before we even do that, let's print out what we're doing. System.out.println, the reverse is. So we've got a character array. In other words, we've got all these characters stored in an array that we can access individually. What we want to do is printed out the reverse. I can speak, I promise. We want to print it out in reverse. So we can go from the last character to the first character and print them out in reverse order. And we can do this using a for loop with our array. So, for int I equals 0. Now, what can we do? Do we really want this to be equal to 0? Not really, because we want to go from the last element to the first one. So we can go characters.length, and then we can go I is greater than 0, no, greater than or equal to 0, because we want to include 0 because that 0 is the first element. Finally, instead of going I++ like we've done previously, we can decrement I instead. I minus minus. Finally, we can print out the character system.out.println, and it will be characters at index I. Okay? So let's have a look and see exactly what happens when we compile this. Whoa, there it is. There it is. Javac. Compile's fine. Let's run it. Uh-oh. Exception in thread main. Array index out of bounds exception 7. Wow, what does that mean? Well, it takes a little bit of thinking. By the way, index out of bounds exceptions are a huge debugging annoyance. But what's worse is other programming languages don't do any bounds checking on our array at all, and they leave us up on our own to figure out what's going on. So Java, in the state that it crashes with an exception, is really easy to help us find problems. So anyway, what happened here? We set I to characters.length. Now, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but the word Michael has 7 characters in it. In other words, length is equal to 7. Okay? So the first line, we've tried to access characters at 7. However, because the counting of the characters starts at 0, we get into a problem. So if we have M-I-C-H-A-E-L, normally these would be in single quotes, I know, but don't worry about it for now. Where is the element at index 7 if we're counting from 0? M is 0, I is 1, C is 2, H is 3, A is 4, E is 5, and L is 6. Because we're counting from 0, there is no element at index 7, which is why our program crashed with an exception. So these are really, really common index out of bounds exception. I just wanted to make you aware of these. So how can we fix this? It's really simple. Set I to start with length minus 1. In other words, if we put in Michael, it's going to equal 6 to start with. So we save this and recompile it and run it. The reverse is like... That didn't really do what we wanted. It'd be easier if this was all on the same line. That's really easy to fix. Get rid of the println. Actually, then what we'll do is have an empty system.out.println so that our program ends on a new line, which is awesome. Oops, not like this. That should be outside of the for loop. Very important. The reverse is like. Awesome. We can do, and because we haven't actually put in... Oh, if we put in 6 here instead of characters.length, we'd get the same result if we were dealing with the words Michael every time. Because we've used characters.length, we don't really know, when we're writing our program, we don't know how long a word the user's going to put in. But because we're using characters.length, it doesn't matter. This is really important. Hard coding values is a bad idea when we're writing programs, so just keep that in mind as well. So finally, we can put in anything here, any word we want, etc. The reverse is arphilacrepus. So it works awesomely. So with that is pretty much all I want to say in this video. We've looked at arrays in a bit of detail. We know how to create them. We know how to declare new ones if we don't know what the values are going to be. We know how to access elements in an array. We know how to loop through or iterate through all the elements of the array. We've learnt what this string array args does, and we've done something interesting with it. So with that, that's going to wrap up this video and this series of Java VTMs. we've covered all the basics that we need to know to write some simple Java programs. So I hope you've learnt something. Please, if you found this useful, let me know. I'd like to know that people are actually using this and it's helping them. So that's going to wrap up this video and this series of videos. So thanks a lot.